如果你淨係想知道邊度跑得最快，你就將佢掉到田徑場上面，叫你沿住跑道直線衝刺就得啦。咁但係如果你要去翻籃球場、足球場或者係美式足球場，咁遊戲規則咧就完全唔一樣啦。咁喺真正嘅比賽入邊，你幾乎唔會一直直線咁樣往前咁樣跑動嘅，咁一定要隨時可以啟動到、急停到或者避到、轉向，而且全部都係發生喺0點幾秒之內嘅。咁但係而家仲有幾百萬個運動員係靠住喺敏捷梯入邊做啲隨便嘅腳步嘅動作，或者淨係不停咁樣跑直線加速，然後喺度諗點解我比賽入邊都仲係唔夠快。咁今日嘅嘉賓咧就非常清楚原因喺邊度啦。咁 Michael Drach 係一個體能教練，咁佢專門係打造真正比賽用得到出嚟嘅速度 （real game speed）。咁佢唔係淨係將你變成跑道上面嘅短跑選手，而係可以將你變成一個可以多方向移動嘅武器。因為佢知道速度嘅關鍵唔係淨係你油門可以踩得幾大，而係你幾識踩剎車。咁佢會幫我哋拆解敏捷訓練入邊最大嘅大話係乜嘢，帶我哋理解減速嘅科學，仲有俾一個你可以直接套用喺球場上面嘅爆發力嘅藍圖。我哋歡迎 Michael Drach。咁 Michael， 我哋由一個最大嘅迷思開始先啦。好多小朋友想喺籃球或者足球變得更加快，所以就去田徑場跑啲100米嘅衝刺訓練啦。咁但係點解所謂嘅我哋跑道嘅速度啊 track speed 唔一定可以轉換成為比賽速度 game speed 咧？咁呢兩者之間其實最根本嘅差別喺邊度咧？
That's a good question. Now, going to a track and running 100-meter sprints isn't the worst thing you can do, but I mean, it's better than going out and running 2 miles. But the reason why it doesn't always translate is because, well, first of all, you have to look at your sport. If your sport really doesn't get close to max velocity, let's say basketball, tennis, the shorter sprint sports, like going and running 100-meter sprints might not be the best use of your time. Will it help? A little bit, yes. And so doing sprints is part of the equation. And so like I always try to tell my athletes is like, if you want to work on your max velocity, go do sprints. I probably wouldn't do 100. I'd probably stick with maybe 40 or 50 meters. And I would do a lot of rest in between, because in order to run fast, in order to get faster, you have to run fast. And so one of the biggest things I'll see is, you say going to the track and run hundreds, but people will think conditioning, doing like maybe ladder sprints back and forth or sprint and have maybe a 30-second rest. It's like that is conditioning, and that's great for your sport, but it's not going to get much yield in your speed. And so you kind of have to have your nervous system firing on all cylinders to run fast, and fatigue is the enemy of that. And so a lot of people will confuse conditioning for speed training, and that's here in the States. Like you go to a lot of your Division I, football or soccer, and you go to their workouts, it's conditioning, and it's designed to like break you down, get you in shape, mental toughness, but it's not true speed training. And so some coaches are starting to understand we need to have a day where we are running fast with lots of rest in between, so we can get really good quality sprints, and that's one of the best ways to get faster. And so we can dive more into that in the next question. I know you have some other questions on that topic, but yeah, 100-meter sprints, not the worst thing you could do. It's good, but you should be doing a lot more than that.
我哋將速度拆開嚟睇啊，我哋先由加速開始，咁啊等於我哋好似踩油門咁樣。好多運動員咧覺得自己嘅第一步好重好慢，咁如果你要同一個小學5年級嘅學生去解釋呢件事嘅話，一個有爆發力嘅第一步關鍵究竟係乜嘢咧？係咪淨係將重量練得更大就可以咧？定係其實係同技術有關嘅咧？
Yeah, so I train a lot of 5th graders. I have a lot of younger athletes, and so this is how I explain it to them. I was like, okay, in order for you to move forward in one direction, you have to push the ground behind you in the opposite direction. So if an athlete feels really slow in their first step, they're not producing enough force quickly. And so can getting stronger in the weight room help? 100%. They could do 0 speed training, and if they're a weaker athlete, especially 5th graders, they're not going to be that strong. If they get their legs stronger, there will be a carry over to their first step, to a point. And so this is where transferring strength and power from the weight room to how it can be a good first step, you need to learn how to take that strength, take that new power that you developed, and how to apply it into the ground horizontally, which means I have to be able to push the ground behind me really hard in a short amount of time. And so that's one reason why you get these super, super strong dudes in the weight room, but you have them do a sprint in the first 10 yards and they're awful. Also because they don't know how to use that strength and that power and apply it into sprinting. They can produce a lot of force, but maybe not in a fraction of a second. And so understanding how to push the ground behind you and move your hips forward. And so I'll tell my athletes, this is for the 5th grader and also for my higher level athletes, imagine you have a tracker on your hip bone and you want to see how far that hip bone moves in one step. And so a good way to think of it is like literally try to jump as far as you can in that first step. But now that's probably going to be a little bit slower. And so then I tell them, okay, jump as far as you can, but get there faster. Get your hip to that same spot, but get there faster. And a lot of times that helps. And so technique is huge. And so if they're bent at the waist, they're not getting their hips through, they're not getting their power. And I'll tell them that's kind of like doing a vertical jump without actually getting my hips through. And so it's like you need to learn how to snap the hips. So for, using my hand, but I hope you get the idea. You need to learn how to snap your hips through to project your body forward. And there's so many little nuances with technique there. So yeah, one job that I have is how can I get each athlete to understand for their body, how can we get them to understand a good first step? How can we be more powerful? How can we produce more force in less time? The simplest way to do it is resisted sprinting. And so whether you have a sled, a hill works. I use a 1080 sprint at my facility. That is, if they don't do it right, they're not going to really go anywhere because there's something pulling them back. So it's like it's pulling their hips back. And so that you have to learn how to move your hips forward, and resisted sprints is phenomenal for developing that.
跟住講減速呢個我覺得你工作入邊最有趣嘅一部分，因為其實我睇到你嘅內容都大概已經3年啦。咁大家都好瘋狂咁樣追求加速變快，變得更加敏捷。咁但係你成日講嘅係剎車，亦都即係減速 deceleration。咁點解可以好快咁樣停落嚟？其實係變快嘅關鍵呢？咁減速呢個能力點樣可以令到運動員喺場上面有一個更大嘅優勢呢？
Okay, it's the only sport where you really don't need to decelerate is track. And so that's why a lot of track athletes who are some of the fastest in the world are not good at other sports because they know how to run in one direction. But if you watch football, soccer, basketball, tennis, volleyball, you have to be able to change directions quickly. And every time you change direction, you are decelerating. Whether it's in a linear plane or frontal plane, like you are slowing your body down. And so the athlete that can slow their body down the quickest is going to have a huge advantage. And so there's proper ways to train that. And so basically deceleration is eccentric force capabilities. And what does that mean? It's think like if you're doing a squat, it's the lowering down of the squat, the lengthening of the muscles in that squat pattern. If an athlete can't handle eccentric forces, but not just that, but fast eccentric forces, they can't change directions quickly. So this is how I explain it to my athletes. Think of your body as a spring, okay? So you have a weak spring, I can just compress that spring, okay? And I have a strong spring, I can't compress it. Athletes that have good, fast, eccentric capabilities have really strong springs. And so let's just take, let's go basketball. I'm shuffling one direction. I need to stop and shuffle the other direction. Well, when I put my outside leg out to stop myself, if that spring is weak, it's going to take too long for me to change my body's direction and accelerate back out. But if that spring is strong, I'm going to be able to stop really quickly. And so athletes that can stop really quickly, athletes that have really good, fast, eccentric capabilities are the ones who are going to be more dominant on the field because they can stop, change direction, stop, change direction. Those are the ones that you look at. They're shifty. They're agile. Those are the ones who are going to have a huge advantage on the field because of that. And it can even make up for someone who has not great linear speeds. If I'm not very good at acceleration, if I'm not very good at max velocity, but I'm phenomenal with change of direction and deceleration, I can set myself up to be really dominant on the field or court.
咁你喺網上面分享咗好多唔同嘅訓練動作，咁你可唔可以帶我哋講一個你其中一個最中意嘅減速訓練？咁同埋你帶學生做呢個動作嘅時候，會特別觀察邊一啲細節呢？
Yes. Okay. So this is how I teach my athletes. I'll go one drill that is kind of like my staple. It's my go-to drill, and it's training them how to use their inside plant foot, so your penultimate step, and your outside plant foot, your final step. It's teaching them how to use both of those steps and making their springs stronger. And so I'll send you one of my videos so maybe you can post it on this drill.
Okay.
But basically, I like to do it with something pulling them in, whether a bungee or the 1080, so they're feeling some tension, and it's harder to get them to stop. And just by putting that bungee or that 1080 on them, it really helps them figure out the angles of their body. Because if they don't do it right, they're going to kind of fall over or tip and get stuck in that cut. But I call it my 1-2 cut shuffle. And so basically, they're facing forward, and they're going to just basically get their inside plant foot down first, outside plant foot, and they're going to shuffle out of it. And so I have a whole breakdown in my agility course how to do this, like every detail, where your toes should be pointed, where your pressure of your foot should be, where your torso angle should be. All of that I break down really well to help athletes and coaches understand how to teach us a little bit more efficiently. Because if I go to right now a high school basketball practice or volleyball, and I have them and I watch them do kind of agility drills, change of direction, I feel like 90% of them don't know how to use their inside plant foot. And so why is that important? Well, your inside plant foot, your penultimate step, is taking the force off of that outside leg. So the more you can decelerate off of that inside plant foot, the less work that outside plant foot has to do. Does that make sense? And so if I'm trying to change directions and I just put my outside, if I just stick my foot out there to stop, I can probably stop well, but I'm not going to be able to accelerate back out very quickly. But if I can use my inside leg to decelerate and slow myself down, I can use that outside plant foot to kind of push the ground away, and now I'm going to be accelerating out of my change of direction much more efficiently. So that's kind of like my go-to, and I'll do that over and over and over again, and I'll gradually increase the resistance, make it harder and harder, and these athletes all of a sudden start to build up the tissue resistance. They're able to handle fast eccentric forces, and then from there I need to okay, we can do this drill really well, but can we do it while reacting? Can I do it chasing after a ball or reacting to someone on defense? So I got to come up with some other drills for that.
咁一講到敏捷或者變向，咁好多人腦入邊第一個畫面就係運動員喺一個敏捷梯上面做啲好快、好花式嘅腳步。咁我知道你對呢樣嘢有幾多嘅睇法嘅。咁點解傳統嘅敏捷梯訓練其實冇令到我哋真係變得更加敏捷呢？咁如果運動員真係想提升變向能力，佢嘅 change of direction， 咁其實佢應該要做啲乜嘢訓練先比較有效呢？
Yeah, so when I first started as a trainer, gosh, like 20 plus years ago, that's kind of like when the agility ladder was everybody did it, including me. And I'll never forget, I had this one young basketball player who had the fastest feet on the agility ladder, but he was really bad at change of direction. And so it's like, okay, what is the disconnect here? Why are these ladder drills not actually translating to movement? And this was very early on in my career, but I had to realize, okay, the agility ladder is it good for some things? Absolutely. I still use it to this day. I'll warm my athletes up on it. I'll do single leg hops on it, which is great. But it's not going to translate to change of direction. Kind of, you go back to our previous questions, because it's not training like fast eccentric forces in a plane. So basically, you're not training lateral movement, how to stop your center of mass and move it quickly in the opposite direction. And so like what athletes should be doing for agility is they need to learn how to handle those forces. You can go as simple as a skater jump, just kind of like bounding back and forth laterally. Like that is training something that's going to help you handle more force in a lateral cut. That's going to be more advantageous than doing agility ladders. And so, you need to have an athlete learn how to stop in a linear direction, stop in a lateral direction. All the deceleration is what an athlete needs for better true agility. But what is the definition of agility? You break that down. It's changing direction to a stimulus. And so my whole approach is I need to teach these athletes, first of all, how to change directions. And that's in every direction. Okay. So it's like they need to learn how to stop going forward, stop going sideways, stop going backwards, and then reposition themselves to come back out. That's the change of direction part. So I build up that. And like I said earlier, then we need to create that same response to a stimulus. And so they need to do the exact same thing while reacting. Otherwise, it's not really going to transfer over. And so I could have someone do my change of direction drills where they know what the drill is, they know where to stop. They could be perfect at that. And then I'll put them over to a reaction drill and it just goes out the window and they don't do it well. And so that's a great teaching spot for me. It's like, okay, we need to take this drill over here and combine it here. And so you got to kind of connect the dots. And once that happens, my athletes are phenomenal at agility, true agility, reacting to a stimulus, stopping and changing direction.
咁你設計呢啲變向或者敏捷嘅訓練嘅時候，你有冇啲咩實際嘅例子？可唔可以分享佢究竟要對啲乜嘢做反應？咁譬如你話你會加啲乜嘢元素啊？等佢哋唔係淨係按住流程去行，而係真係要做出啲反應咧。
Yeah, I mean, one that I do, I'll either do a pointing drill where I have them I'll point to a direction and I'll kind of change the point, or I'll throw tennis balls. And so most sports athletes are reacting to a ball. And so I'll have them, run in one direction and I'll throw a ball in another spot. And so it could be anywhere, but they have to like react to that ball, wherever it is. And so they need to learn how to get under control, change the directions, cut, and then reaccelerate again to get that ball. And it's just pretty funny too. You throw a ball in there and you toss it in there. It doesn't matter what level athlete. I could have a 10-year-old or I could have a professional athlete. Their intensity goes way up. They want to catch that ball. It's kind of like a dog, playing fetch. It's just funny how it works. It's like they get so competitive to try to catch that ball before it bounces more than once.
而家聽緊呢個 podcast 好多都有教練同埋運動員，佢哋可能呢個禮拜就想將自己嘅訓練調整好。咁如果一個人一個星期得2日，佢係專門攞嚟訓練速度同埋敏捷度嘅，咁你會點樣幫佢規劃呢2日呢？咁大概會花幾多時間去加速，幾多係減速，咁幾多係變向訓練上面呢？
That's a tough one because you don't know. I need to know what else they are doing. And so, I'll get most of my athletes that come train with me once or twice a week. And even the ones that come in once a week, I'll ask them the first thing they come in, how are your legs feeling? What did you do today? What did you do yesterday? And they're like, man, our coach ran us so hard. We did heavy weight training. My legs are dead. And so I got to adjust my plan and figure out a workout that's going to best suit them so we don't get hurt. But let's say we have 2 days a week to train. This is how I would split it up. And it depends on what they actually really need to improve. But let's say they need to improve everything. Okay. I would pick one day where acceleration focus. So they're working on first step power, maybe 10-yard sprints, 15-yard sprints, shorter sprints, learning how to produce horizontal force, where broad jumps, anything that's going to transfer to that, resisted sprinting. And I have one day that's more focused on max velocity. And so even in some sports that don't hit max velocity, it's still good to train those tissues to reach faster speeds. And so we'll do maybe like flying 10s or flying 20s or even 40-yard sprints with full rest, lots of rest, like 2, 3, 4 minute rest on those. And then at the end of those, so you got your acceleration day and your max velocity day, I would throw at the end your agility and your change of direction drills. And so, but that's how I would do it. I would do acceleration and change of direction, and then I'll do max velocity and change of direction. And so I think it's good to do change of direction twice, because that's one where I feel like a lot of athletes are really lacking. But let's say the athlete is decent at max velocity, but they are horrible at acceleration. Well, then let's do acceleration 2 days a week. And so yeah, it kind of depends on the athlete, but that's kind of how I would structure the workouts.
因為我接觸到好多都係業餘運動員啦，佢哋成日喺網上面睇一大堆影片，然後自己就會砌一個速度嘅訓練嘅計劃。咁喺你眼中咧，大家用 YouTube 或者係 IG 上面啲內容去自己去組成一個速度日嘅訓練咧，你最常見同埋最大嘅一啲錯誤係乜嘢咧？
Well, they might see, fancy drills, and I'm partially to blame. I'll post new drills that I kind of come up with, and they look fancy and but a lot of athletes probably aren't ready for those drills. And so that's probably one thing, is that they're just trying these drills and their mechanics might not be right, or their tissues can't quite handle some of that load. But you'd be surprised if you go to a lot of my workouts, or if you go to, let's say, some like your top track sprint coaches and watch them. The workouts are pretty simple, and there's not a lot of fancy stuff. And so it's just like it's learning how to produce more force in the ground quickly. And a lot of times you don't need crazy fancy drills to accomplish that.
咁我之前有同 Rolf Allman 有講過佢對速度一啲睇法啦，咁佢成日會提到彈性 elasticity 呢個概念。我都好奇你嘅想法，你會點樣同運動員去解釋乜嘢係彈性呢？咁呢個彈性實際上係點樣幫助佢哋跑得更加快，提升佢嘅速度表現呢？
Yeah, so that's a really loaded scientific question, and I'm not the best expert on that. But this is how I explain it to my younger athletes. Is I can even send you a video. But I built a model. I built a model out of wood and hinges, but I made a calf muscle that is a spring, and I made an Achilles tendon as a rubber band. And I tell my athletes, we want to use this rubber band because your tendons are free energy. They don't use energy. Your muscles use a lot of energy. And so if we're not elastic, if we're not using our tendons very well, our muscles have to work extra hard. And so what we want our muscles to not elongate very much while it's contracting. So the best way I can explain it is like your foot hits the ground. We don't want our calf muscle to stretch too far. We want it to kind of create a tight hold, so then the rubber band, the Achilles tendon, can stretch a little bit and load. And so I'll play my athletes is like, we want to get our calf muscles strong, and we want them to work isometrically. There is a stretch component to the muscle fibers, but it's mostly what we want to try to get is the tendons to load. And all these plyometrics, all these isometric holds that we do, like that is making you more elastic, which is your springs. You're making your springs stronger. And so there are definitely probably a lot smarter people out there that can explain that scientifically, but I use spring and rubber band as my teaching tool.
I think you explained it very well. I think it's easier for everyone to understand.
Good, thank you.
我諗Michael呢個最後一題。咁經過咁多年係教速度同埋敏捷之後，有一個你曾經好堅信嘅訓練嘅理念，咁但係依家睇翻其實自己係錯嘅咧。
That's a good question. Let me think for 1 second.
No worries, take your time.
Yeah. I wouldn't say it was completely wrong, but when I was first learning about stiffness of the ankle joint, which means we don't want that heel to drop low to the ground, I didn't quite understand the difference between acceleration and max velocity. And so if I had an athlete sprinting at max velocity and their foot hit the ground and their heel stayed really high, I was like, oh, that's good. That's a stiff ankle. That's a tight spring. Whereas that's actually not the case. And so, like when in max velocity, when that heel lowers to the ground, that is the tendons loading. That is the foot kind of pronating a little bit, and that is the springs working. But in your first couple steps in acceleration, we don't want that heel to collapse down to the ground. And so we want the heel to kind of stay high. And so that was a hard one for me at first to understand. But once I understood that, it's made my coaching eye much better, especially for acceleration. I can see major leaks of force when that heel just collapses down to the ground. It means their body can't handle the amount of force they're putting into the ground. And so we got to build up those tissues to handle that force. Where at max velocity, if I see a heel just kind of drop too fast, or if I see a heel that stays too high, both of them are telling me that something's off. We kind of want that foot to load and spring during max velocity. So not completely wrong, but it's like it was really important for developing my eye and analyzing sprint mechanics.
咁我再問多題啦。咁喺依家呢個時間點，你有冇一個你依家仲相信嘅觀念，但係你覺得喺未來5到10年可能會俾自己推翻或者要修正嘅咧？
I have a lot of strong beliefs, but I don't know. Okay, here. I might ruffle some feathers on this one. I don't go public with this belief. I'm kind of hesitating to say this, but I believe that most shoes that we wear are the cause of the majority of ACL injuries. Because we can go into all this, most shoes have a narrow toe box. And what happens when an athlete wears a narrow toe box their whole life? Their big toe caves in. And that big toe is so important for stability on the ground. And you need to have a strong and stable foot to have a strong and stable knee. And so the athletes that I see that have a big toe that's collapsed in, all of a sudden they got knee valgus, their hips, and the feet and the hips are weak, which causes the knee not to be stable. And so that's why most of my workouts are barefoot. I try to do as much as I can barefoot. I can't do all of it. I can't do change of direction barefoot. But when I want to build up that foot, I want to build up that big toe to be strong, so we can create a more stable knee and a strong knee. So that one, some research might come up down the road that's completely wrong, but that's one belief that I have is like these shoes are destroying our feet. And so go buy a wide toe box shoe. I'm not saying a barefoot shoe. You don't have to have a barefoot shoe, but don't have a shoe that's just going to just jam your toes all the time. That's not good for your feet. So
awesome. Oh, yeah, it's a great advice, and I learned so much from you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, thanks for having me. This is great, Jason.
咁喺我哋結束之前咧，如果聽眾想更加深入認識 Michael， 了解佢嘅訓練系統，或者教練咧想追蹤佢線上課程嘅內容，報讀好似 The Agility Protocol 呢類專門係講敏捷同埋變向嘅課程咧，咁我喺下面嘅簡介放低佢嘅 Instagram 同埋相關嘅連結嘅，咁大家可以自己去睇下。咁今日我同 Michael 嘅對話咧，對我嚟講唔係淨係關於速度訓練嘅，而係關於一種我哋點樣去看待運動表現嘅方式。咁我哋太習慣用啲簡單嘅嘢嚟去定義乜嘢係快，譬如直線衝刺嘅秒數啦、跑道上面嘅成績啦，甚至係影片入邊睇落去好型嘅一啲腳步。咁但係真正決定比賽入邊邊個可以先可以攞到個波，邊個可以創造到空間，往往唔係你直線可以跑幾快，而係你敢唔敢停、敢唔敢轉、敢唔敢喺混亂入邊全速咁樣做決定。咁呢集都有提醒一樣嘢，如果你淨係訓練啲睇落去好似令到腳步會再快啲嘅嘢，而冇去面對減速、變向、反應呢啲訓練嘅話，咁其實我哋幾努力都未必可以幫到個運動員太多，因為我哋冇令到佢可以適應比賽入邊可能會遇到唔同嘅情況。咁或者你係一個運動員，或者你係一個教練，或者你只係好單純咁樣想喺場上面唔好再慢半拍。咁我想留俾你個問題係咁嘅，當你話你想變得更加快嘅時候，你係咪就係追求一個可能係速度上面睇落更加靚嘅數字？咁定係你真係想比賽入邊係可以真正用到呢啲速度嘅？咁如果呢一集對你有少少啟發，咁請你將佢分享俾一個你覺得明明應該更加快，但係好似棘住嘅隊友或者球員。咁亦都唔記得訂閱我哋嘅 channel， 亦都歡迎喺留言同我講今日邊一個畫面令你重新思考乜嘢叫做速度。咁我哋繼續 move without limits， 我係 Jason， 我哋下次見。